What is going on, everyone? My name is Benjamin Nowak, and today's video is focused on my top 5 smallmouth baits for the Great Lakes. A lot of guys are going to be making the trip up to St. Clair. They're coming to the Great Lakes, the St. Lawrence, after it's popped off about 10 times for these pros. Guys are going to be traveling to the Great Lakes, so I want to share with you guys the baits that I have confidence in when I'm targeting giant smallmouth on these massive bodies of water to get them to bite and put bigger than average fish in the boat. So let's really dive into this thing. Before we dive into the rest of this video, I just want to tell you that I'm having a live stream seminar this Sunday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern time. We're going to be talking about summertime smallmouth movements, everything you guys need to know about smallmouth bass during the summertime, where they go, where they feed, and how to catch more of them. This Sunday, 6:30 p.m. Tune in, be there. We're going to be talking about everything summertime smallmouth fishing. But enjoy the rest of this video. So today's video is all about helping you guys pick out the baits to have confidence that you're choosing the right selection when you're coming up to the Great Lakes, Lake St. Clair, Lake Huron, Lake Michigan, Lake Ontario, Lake Erie, wherever you're going, any of these big, massive bodies of water with giant smallmouth, that you have the right baits to have success on these bodies of water. So the first bait is my favorite, and that's the way these are going to be ordered. My favorite to my, I wouldn't say least favorite, but the one that I would use the least out of the bunch. And the first one is a drop shot. A drop shot's such an effective tool for me because it catches big fish that don't seem to want to touch anything else. These fish this time of year want to suspend. They want to kind of hang really tight around bait fish and around these deep water boulders. So a drop shot's really effective at really picking through an area. I just did a full drop shot seminar talking all about drop shotting, but it's my favorite, most effective and efficient way to catch these fish. If you guys want to learn everything that I do to have success with a drop shot, go check out that seminar. But for me, it's my #1 technique during the summer. I can fish it drifting, I can fish it target casting or dropping on fish that are in that deeper water where a lot of the summertime smallmouth sit, or if they do push up onto the shallow flats or around grass. It's a great technique for me to really pick these areas apart and have success. So drop shot really gets a nod for me. Now there's a couple colors that I'm going to be choosing, and most often it's going to be the most natural color that I can find. I want to imitate and match the forage that these bass are feeding on. So a lot of times if I'm choosing the Berkley flatworm, it's going to be brown back or green pumpkin. The hitworm, it's going to be like a green pumpkin kind of color. I really want those natural colors. Now when it's overcast like this, as you guys might have noticed, I do go to these black or very dark colors. The reason I like this, I think it helps silhouette a little bit better in the water, and these fish can find it a little bit more easily when it's overcast and not the most ideal conditions to be drop shotting. I'll go to a really dark based color to get these fish to find it. There's a couple baits that I like. Obviously the flatworm is a great one. It's damn near impossible to find. The Berkley hitworm is another really good one. The gulp leech, the Berkley gulp leech, that's obviously an all black bait, but if I'm drop shotting a black lure, that leech is actually going to play a lot for me because it has the gulp scent, which truthfully has better dispersion than the max scent. It just dries out really quick, which is why a lot of guys don't like it. If I'm fishing around those really small bait fish or around white bass, I'm going to go with the more translucent / whitish and blue color. That is what I found works best around a lot of those small bait fish and little shiners that those fish like to feed on and key on, especially as they start to move out in the early stages of those deep water, is going with those whiter base colors. Now the next bait that I like to throw a lot, and this is going to come as a surprise to some people, is not a tube. It is a Wobble Head. This actually replaced the tube for me over the past couple of years, and the reason for that is you can fish it in the same areas with a similar style as you fish a tube, but this 3/4 ounce Wobble Head with a little Berkley 3-inch pit boss is a really effective approach to keep that bait on bottom when they're feeding on gobies or bait down along the bottom. When they seem to be nose down and they really want to be on the bottom or close to the bottom, the Wobble Head really gets a lot of play. As you can tell, all the paint's worn off this thing. I go with that 3/4 ounce size basically in 10+ foot of water up until I can't keep that bait on bottom. The key with this bait is you can fish it a lot like a crankbait, but it stays on bottom really effectively. And so you want to crawl this bait as slowly as you can, keep it along bottom, maintain bottom contact, and so once you lose bottom contact, you might need to go up a size. But this 3/4 ounce Wobble Head is my all-time favorite. The bait that I like to pair this with the most is the 3-inch Berkley Pit Boss, or there's a couple of other options that I will pair with this bait, especially if I'm imitating gobies along the bottom. I like to fish a darter on the Wobble Head. It's not going to have near as much action as the Pit Boss. It doesn't have as much movement, but this looks like a goby, and with the natural action of that thing bouncing off rocks down there, This little darter is going to have a lot of movement. It's going to draw those fish to the bait, and it looks like what they're feeding on. Another really solid choice, and you guys have seen me fish this bait a lot, is the 4-inch Reaction Innovation Spicy Beaver. The thing that I'm going to be making sure of when I'm fishing a wobble head is getting a bait that has a narrow body profile. The biggest key here is being able to get good hook penetration, so when that fish bites, having a narrow body profile will collapse down onto that hook and let that fish get the most bite out of that hook. So this Spicy Beaver from Reaction Innovations is a great selection. The colors I'm using are green pumpkin, or I believe it's electric shad. It's basically very natural style colors, green pumpkins, maybe a little translucence on the belly. But I just like this Spicy Beaver because it seems to get a lot of bites. It also has these really big kickers, so it creates a lot of commotion down there on the bottom at very slow speeds. So you can really slowly crawl that bait, and this thing's going to constantly be moving. That narrow body profile, those big kickers are really key with those baits. The next one that might seem is a little bit of a surprise is the Power Toad, or the Buzz and Speed Toad from Berkley. The reason I like this bait, again, it obviously looks like a goby in this HD American toad color, but with these little paddles on the back here, it's actually going to constantly be kicking. The deal with this bait, especially when you're fishing it on top water, is to have a constant action down there. So when you're crawling this along with a wobble head, it's not going to have near as much as the Spicy Beaver, but it's still going to constantly be moving water. So taking this bait and rigging it on a wobble head is a great choice. It's a little bit unconventional, but it's a great choice if you want to have a bait that's going to constantly be moving at water and creating a lot of commotion down there on the bottom. Now what I'm fishing my wobble head on is the TFO 756. It's a 7.5 heavy rod with a moderate action. The moderate action to me is really important because it bends deep into the rod and it helps those fish get the bait before I really pull it away from them. A lot of times I set the hook really hard, especially in deep water, so having the heavy is important, but letting it bend deep in the rod is going to let those fish get it and not pull the hook away from them. The third bait is a jerk bait. This doesn't really come as a surprise, I'm sure, to most of you. If you're fishing with live scope, a jerk bait's a deadly tool to be able to get those fish to commit. The reason for that is it can elicit a reaction strike just as well as it can get a feeding bite, and it's such a good tool to cover water with, especially when you're up on these shallow flats looking for these fish, or on Lake St. Clair where it's relatively shallow. A jerk bait's a great tool because you can really cover a lot of water and you can trigger these fish to bite even when they don't seem to want to bite anything else up in the water column. The colors that I'm typically selecting when I'm choosing a jerk bait are going to be based on the water clarity. So this color here, which is the Elegee bone color with that chartreuse belly, is going to be what I go with. Anytime there's a little dirtiness to the water's a little bit off color, it's going to stand out effectively and it's going to help draw those fish to the bait. Otherwise, I'm going with very natural bait fish style patterns. This here is the new Berkley Stunna 112 in the perch pattern. I like this color a lot. A lot of these bigger summertime smallmouth like to key in on perch, so having a perch color jerkbait on deck is always a must for me. So when the water's clear and I know they're feeding on perch, this Berkley Stunna 112 in the perch color is going to get a lot of play for me. It's not something I'm going to throw when there's stain in the water or the water's off color because it's very translucent, so it doesn't have a lot of drawing power other than the bait itself. And so if they can't see it, they're not going to necessarily eat that one. And when the water's clear but it's overcast, I like to go with a bait with flashy sides. It's going to flash and it's going to draw these fish from a long ways. So this HT Ito Tennessee shad from Megabass is a really good choice. It looks like a bait fish. As you can tell, the paint's worn off it from fish biting it, but it flashes, it draws fish to the bait. And so when it's kind of clear but it's overcast, you want something that has a lot of drawing power, has a lot of flash, and that's what I'm going with. A more flashy color like this one here. And baits number 4 and 5 are both going to be thrown on the same rod, which is a brand new TFO 763. This is a rod designed for spy baits, designed for small swim baits, and that's what I'm utilizing it for during these summer months when I can find them on live scope or I can see them suspended up in the water column and conditions are right. I like to use light line and small swim baits because it's a very natural presentation that I can put in front of their face, especially when I pair it up with live scope in the front of the boat. Even if you don't have live scope though, this is a great tool when you're fishing around those kind of sunny, slick, calm conditions and those fish don't seem to react to anything else. You can take a small swim bait, you can take a spy bait and fish it up in the water column and get those fish that are suspended up feeding on bait fish. So the 763 with a small swim bait on like a 1/8 or a 1/4 ounce swim bait head with the 3.5 to 4 inch small body swim bait is going to be a good choice, especially when they're keying on smaller bait. If they're keying in on bigger bait fish like perch, you might want to go with a bait caster setup with the big 4.5 inch swim bait. But for me, being on live scope, I can really pick these fish off effectively using this light line and a longer rod. So that's why I'm choosing to throw it on a spinning setup with 8-pound test braid to 6-pound test fluorocarbon leader. Now when I'm choosing spy baits, I'm basically going with one of two styles of colors. The first is a bait fish imitation with a little bit of flash to it. This is a Berkley Spy 70 in the perch color. It has a little bit of flash, throws a little bit of light, but it's not super intrusive. And the other style that I throw is a more translucent style bait that looks like the bait fish. Like I said, a lot of times I'm fishing this in slicker conditions when there's not a lot of wind on the water, when the water seems to be very stagnant and those fish are suspending. So you don't need a ton of flash. You don't typically need a lot of drawing power to this bait. You just kind of reel this up in the water column and you can trigger some bites that way. So spy bait's a really effective tool when they don't want to bite anything else. I can catch them on this bait. So those are the two styles of spy baits that I'm throwing. The Berkley Spy 70, which is a little bit smaller profile, and the Duo Realis 80 G-Fix. Those are my go-tos anytime it's really calm, it's slick conditions, they don't seem to want to bite anything else. A spy bait is a great tool. Or if fish are getting super heavily pressured, you can take that spy bait, go behind other guys, and catch those fish. So those are my 5 baits that I like to choose when I'm on the Great Lakes, targeting the biggest bass you can possibly find on Lake St. Clair, Lake Huron, Lake Erie. These big, massive Great Lakes, when you need to find these fish and trigger them to bite, those are the baits that I'm going with. The Dropshot, the Wobble Head, the jerk bait, the swim bait, and the spy bait are my 5 choices. If you guys have any questions or comments or want to know anything about any of the products that I have talked about in this video, hit me up down in the comment section. I'm always down there responding to you guys as much as I possibly can. But as always, I really appreciate you guys watching the video, checking it out. Hopefully this will help you go out in your body of water and catch some giant smallmouth bass this summer. As always, thank you for watching. Take care, 10 lines. God bless. Pursue passion.